Welcome to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Rollins from Louisville PD in Texas. He has 24 years total experience in law enforcement. Really looking forward to this conversation. Welcome to the show, Chief Rollins. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Of course. I was hoping you could give us a little bit of background. I know that you did 22 years in Arlington PD, and now you've been at your existing agency at Louisville PD for the last 2 years. So, was law enforcement something that you always wanted to be in, or how did you get started 24 years ago?
Yeah, no, it wasn't what I always wanted to be in. When I was in college, I kind of had I guess, a direction of wanting to get into law enforcement right at the tail end of college. I went through school to be a teacher and a coach and an athlete in athletic training. And as I got towards the tail end of my college career, I met my now wife, and I knew that teachers didn't make enough money, and we could probably do a whole podcast on that. But I knew that as I was coming towards the end of my college career, that that wasn't going to be a very sustainable career financially for me. I knew I was going to get married, and so I wanted a job that was going to be exciting. Every day doing something new, every day doing something different, and I love being in service of others. I went on a few police ride outs at the time, and I was hooked. And so I applied, and they bought it, and I got hired. And I did quite a considerable career with Arlington before making my way over here. I was able to work in every bureau that Arlington had. I worked almost in every rank in every bureau that Arlington had. So I had a chance to be a detective and supervise detectives. I was a SWAT officer, and then I supervised and commanded SWAT. I did patrol. I was a patrol sergeant and then a patrol commander. And I really had a chance to see it from all sides. I think that's good from a leadership perspective. It makes you a little more viable to be at least a good police chief on paper for another organization. And then I looked around for chiefing jobs, and this one was nearby, right next door to the town that I graduated high school from. So I have a lot of historical interest in this area, and felt like it would be a good place to set up shop. And here we are.
Love it. I think that the more roles you have and the more experiences you have with different tasks, the more empathy you can have for the job that other people do. And so I find that the people who do have that experience, and it doesn't always have to be exactly in your wheelhouse. And we talk about this a lot of like pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, trying different things so that you can have different perspectives, which makes you a more well-rounded leader. Do you think that the statement is true that it's lonely at the top?
Oh, absolutely. It's very lonely at the top, and I agree with you that I think that I think anybody who wants to lead somebody should have some skin in the game to some degree.
Mm,
I think you should be able to say you've done that before, because I think it's easy when you're doing the job to wonder why are they making this decision.
mm,
But yeah, it is lonely at the top, and I mean, from personal introspection, I'm always very guarded about making anything about me. I want it to be about my organization as much as possible, and I really try to hide from that. But yeah, there have been sleepless nights. I'm confident that I've got gray hair. I think I've aged a year or two emotionally inside from things that we've been through. Because you can't, it's hard where you can vent. You can vent, can't vent down, certainly. And then you have to be careful with venting up. And then parallel as well with your own peers, you have to be cautious with who you talk to. I work in a very safe environment. I've got great leadership, so I know I can vent anything to them. But yeah, it is. It's lonely. My wife takes on a considerable amount of shoulder and fly it by me. Let me hear what's going on, and trying to understand it better. But yeah, that's a true statement.
yeah. Have you found anything? I know you said your wife is a sounding board for you. You have really good command staff that helps you too, but maybe what is your advice for anyone who wants to be in leadership, or maybe someone who's currently in leadership that doesn't feel like they have that support or that sounding board? How do you take care of yourself in leadership so that you can lead other people in the most effective way possible?
Yeah, so that's a unique perspective because not everybody has the same levels of priority. I think when you're in a position of leadership, you have to be able to, number one, you have to decide if you're capable of leading people. That's really what this all comes down to. This is not a matter of resume building. For some people, it is. It's not a matter of a paycheck. For some people, it is. If your priorities are aimed in the wrong direction, then your leadership is going to follow, I think. And I'll sit here and tell you, whether or not my whole organization would agree with me. I'm really interested in managing the people, the leading the people of the Louisville Police Department. So my decisions are always very much based in that. And so when you're talking about coming into leadership, you have to make sure that you are willing to be a leader of others, and you have to be willing to allow yourself to adapt to that, and allow others to find their path while you're leading them. I
Mm,
think that's a big deal as well. And I think for those that are looking to come into it, you have to ask yourself first and foremost why you want to do this. What is it you're asking to do? You're asking to be in charge of others, and the higher you go, the more responsibility you get. And so that all, I mean, we could do a whole podcast on that as well, I'm sure. But that would be my advice: is why are you wanting to do this in the first place? And you talk about self-care. That's a big deal too. And I'm not an expert. I mess up a lot at self-care. Like I don't have it all figured out. And you know, I work out every morning at 5 a.m. I'm up running 5 miles because it's important to me. Because I'm paying attention to my weight and my sleep. And I wear this thing to tell me how my sleep and my overall health is going and whether or not I'm at a good level of readiness. And that actually matters. This thing keeps pretty good track of that. So having that good self-care from physical, emotional, mental are all really important. Relational, anything outside of work is a must. And then spiritual, you know, that's to each person's own interpretation. I've got a very, personal religious influence that keeps me grounded a lot, but there are times even I lose touch with that sometimes and trying to maintain control of all of it. It's a struggle to find the right place to put your feet down and take care of yourself, but you must continue and you must persist in caring for yourself.
I really appreciate that you have this perspective of leadership being about other people and about taking care of them, but also lifting them up and preparing them for their future. I think that sometimes, and I'm really guilty of this, sometimes we get so fixated on titles or self-advancement that we forget the why and we forget that it's about helping to lift others and bring other people along as well. And I think that part of that helping others is a facet or a pillar of wellness. And I think that there's a lot more. We talk about the different pillars of wellness, you know, physical, mental, financial, spiritual. I think that there are more pillars than maybe we understand. And I think being in service of others and helping build other people up is a part of wellness. I also was curious to ask you, you know, do you think that it is a leadership's responsibility to take care of themselves so that they can be in service of others?
Yeah, it's absolutely your responsibility to take care of yourself first, and that's everybody's job. And I know we'll get into this later, but I think I'm even guarded saying this on your podcast because it sounds very about me, but I think we take care of ourselves the least the higher we go. I think it is just expected that we will manage, you know, whatever the crisis is. And I don't think people understand. Well, I'm sorry, that's not fair. Maybe people don't fully appreciate um, the gravity of managing some of these decisions, some of these um, outcomes, and that you have to be able to manage yourself. I think we as chiefs or senior executives don't do a very good job of that globally. Just from the interactions I have with other peers in this area, I know that that's a struggle. So you
Yeah.
have to force yourself to do it. You have to deliberately force yourself to do it because you're never off duty, right? I mean, my city manager is great. She's been probably one of the best leaders I've ever had in my life. Um, all of them are. The couple of bosses I have, they're both great, but they're always really fixated on you've got to take time for yourself, and they're spot on correct. But the reality is, in public safety, myself and the fire chief, we never really get that time off. Even if I'm on a cruise this summer, I'm going to check my email and I'm gonna tell my command staff if one of our officers is injured or killed or something serious, you need to reach me. Like I need to know because I need to. That's part of my job. Right? I need to come home and be with the
Right.
department. So we never really get that time off. Your brain never comes to a halt. Let me say that.
I can honestly, I know we're in different lines of work, but I can relate to that. And I don't remember the last time I had a vacation where I wasn't also working or trying to work, you know, even trying to work US hours when you're out of the country, you know, and trying to
Right.
figure out like when is 9 a.m. on, you know, and answering emails. But I think that at some point we were told this lie that if we took care of ourselves, it was selfish, and that we had to sacrifice ourselves for everybody else. And I think that, and I was thinking about this morning, I think that wellness has to be a lifestyle. It has to be something that you do consistently. And if you wait for motivation, you're setting yourself up for failure. And I think that the busier you are and the more responsibility you have, the more infrequent motivation is going to be, right? Because it's never going to be the perfect time. You're always going to be tired. There's always going to be another email. There's always going to be another task. And so, how can you create the consistency and the discipline over time that creates the lifestyle that's going to bring you through? And to me, what you said before is, you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and you go on a run, and that's what you do every day. That's building the lifestyle. That's building the dedication and the consistency over motivation. And I am the same. I have to get up early. I was up early this morning. I was in the gym by probably like 5:30 this morning. And I battle with myself every day with this because I'm not a morning person. I actually really hate it, like if we're being completely honest. But I have to lean on that why. Like, why am I doing this? Why is it important for me to do it? And I feel like in my role, in my position, I have to lead by example. Like, there's no way that I can talk about wellness and the importance of wellness if I'm not taking care of myself.
Yeah, we agree 100%. I'm the same way. I struggle with running. My amazing bride is a triathlete, a marathoner, and she's hit all of the major ones around the country. This is her life. And the way she runs is very dedicated and very analytical, and she's great at it. And I struggle with it. I'm not a quitter, but I'm going to complain about it the whole way. But I believe that it has a lot of value because I think it's a good time to clear your mind. And I find that I have a lot of good dialogue with myself when I run. Whether or not that's healthy, I'm not sure, right? I'm not sure if me playing out events in my head or what the day holds in front of me, if I've got a particularly challenging meeting that day or something related to an employee. I do tend to talk that out a lot while I run. Whether or not that's healthy, I don't know, but it helps get me through the run.
Yeah. I actually want to talk about that a little bit because I do think that we live in a time where we're so inundated with distractions. We're so busy. And when we're not busy, we busy ourselves, right? And you see a lot of escaping and numbing and on your phone or watching TV. And it seems to me, and I've started to kind of look out a little bit and observe behavior from other people and understanding how every free moment seems to be filled with something. And I think that having those internal dialogue, having that space to think or to be, without the distractions of everything else is really important. And I think that when we don't have that internal assessment of what's going on, then we kind of don't know where we're going. And I have a lot of conversations with, people within organizations that are like, I'm too busy, or I can't do this, or I don't know how to do that. But there isn't a lot of like zooming out and understanding, okay, like what are the steps that I have to do in order to accomplish that because you're so distracted. I don't know if I'm making any sense at all, but my question for you is how do you convey the message to people within your organization to have that self assessment and to prioritize themselves? Because one of the things you said to me offline was that, cops kind of put their, what did you say to me? I have it written down because I thought this was really, um, impactful. You said cops reassign happiness to those around them. And so it's again this idea that you're taking care of everybody else and taking care of yourself last. So how do you convey the message to everybody that it's important to have self-assessment? It's important to take care of yourself first.
Yeah, that's a great question because it goes back to what we talked about earlier about kind of how this has been viewed over time, right? And I know that President's 21st Century on Task Force on Police in that report in 2014 talked about, officer safety and wellness. And that was only the first time you saw a dynamic shift strategically towards that.
Mm.
I think to answer your question, it needs to be infused in your organization. I don't mean that I don't mean programs. I don't mean systems or resources. Those are all great, and we should have all of them. But I mean, it should be the way we are and we act. And so every time that I have an opportunity to meet with a new employee, I get to talk to them on day one because they get hired, by the chiefs out down my hall. Once I get the chance to meet with them, I tell them three things. I tell them the minimum thing that it takes to work here. It's a little back and forth we have about what your job is here. Second one, I talk about ethics and how we will behave, how we are as a police department. And the last one is called self-care. I
Mm.
expect you to take care of yourself. And all that means is from the physical, the mental, emotional, spiritual, you have to care for all those things. That means you have to take care of yourself physically. If you don't work out, any movement is fine. If you just monitor your diet, whatever that works for you. If you drink in moderation, just all the things that are necessary. And then I need you to have some sort of physical fitness, anything. Just keep that up, and then make sure you have good relationships outside of this work. If that's your home and your family, great. If you don't have that type of thing at your house, then where else can you have that output? Not just here at the PD. And then your own emotions, learning how to react appropriately to things that don't go your way, right? Or things that go your way that are great, or horrible, tragic things, and how to react to them. And then knowing that that is exactly the level that we're going to set when you walk in here, and you're guarded from the minute we spoke until something happened. But even then, you have to know as a leader, at least as a chief, they're not going to come to you. You still have to provide for an opportunity for them to do that. So it needs to be infused in the organization. We had a couple of critical incidents over the summer this year where several of my officers were involved in deadly force encounters. One where a person that they shot died, and another where a person that they shot lived. But in either case, very difficult for those officers to go through. Well, we paid and offered to send these officers to some EMDR and some therapy at our expense. A couple of we didn't even have that we didn't have that in the SOP, but we did it. It was that important. And a couple of them did it, and a couple of them found great value in it. And so now to tell that story to others of, hey, this officer had this issue and this experience, this dispatcher had this issue and this experience, and this is what they did, and it was totally normal.
Mm.
And I shared with them that I myself have been to therapy. When my wife and I were newly married, right, we went to therapy, and even when I was a young and up and coming commander in Arlington, I was really stressed. I had a lot going on, and I needed to talk it out with a neutral party. It is totally healthy and okay to not be okay. And I think we as leaders have to be able to infuse that everywhere in the organization. That is a nonstop ticking clock. You have to want to do it. You have to believe it. You have to tell everyone we're doing it. Then you have to hold your supervisors accountable for doing it. When we notice a problem, we all say something and we bring all the resources to help.
Yeah. I really like that you said you set the expectation from the get.
Mhm.
And I I've had people in my life tell me that I set really high expectations for people, like almost like unattainable expectations. And I think they were actually saying this maybe in a negative. And I had to do some like self-assessment, myself of like, do I do that? Am I too hard on people? And then I heard someone say that people will rise to the level that you set. And obviously, you want to gauge, you don't want it to be unachievable, but I think that we should be setting high expectations for people and the people around us. Like, we should want everyone to be the best versions of themselves that they can be. And I think if I set the bar too low, it's a disservice. I want them to strive to be better. And so I like that you set the expectation early of this high standard, not an unachievable standard, but a high standard of like, hey, these are the things that we want for you because we care about you. These are things that are going to help you have longevity throughout your career and throughout your life. And we want that for you. We want you to be the best version of yourself. I like that you talked about emotional regulation. That's something that I've had to really learn how to do over time. And it's something that's not really easy for me. That's definitely a learned skill. But again, I had someone call me out on it one time and they were like, listen, I know you don't like what's going on, but the way you're responding to it is really poor. And the one thing you do have control over is your response. How you respond to a situation is in your control, and you have to have the ability to do that. And again, it can be a learned skill. It might not be something that you're necessarily good at, but you can train yourself to be good at. Um, Have you ever heard of this guy? His name's Gary Vaynerchuk. Have you ever heard of this guy?
I have not. It's
Gary
like,
V. He's like a social media guy. He's really has a huge personality, but one of the things that he used to say is that everything is your fault. And it was a little aggressive, but I think the idea that he was trying to make is that we spend a lot of time pointing our fingers outwards rather than trying to understand our role within any given situation. And the reason why I bring this up is because I think it relates to wellness. You
yeah,
know, it is our choice to go to the gym or not. It is our choice to eat healthy or not. It is our choice to respond poorly or to respond in a positive way. So when we don't do those things, it's not because we don't have time. It's not because, of all the outside things that we're going to point our fingers at. It's because of us. It's our decision, and so therefore it's our fault if we let those things slide. And so I think again it goes back to how can we set high expectations for ourselves, how can we take accountability and responsibility for our own wellness, and how can we make it a lifestyle.
yeah, that's all really great information. I feel very much the same way. And that's actually something I cover with people that I get to meet and work with. And I share this message as much as I can around the organization. Your attitude is what's driving the culture of this organization. I assure you, it's not me. And I don't mean that I'm distancing myself from culture. Of course, the chief has a lot of input on what the culture of the organization is, but how you show up and how you bring your attitude to the work is a large amount of what happens here. And I have officers I have people that'll tell me, and even where I came from, it'll talk about the morale of an organization. Well, the morale's down. Man, morale is something that is intrinsically controlled. It's something that you're controlling. And I got to tell you, if you're driving a car around at 4:15 in the morning in a beat, I don't know that me being dead asleep in my house is impacting your morale. I don't know that I'm doing that. I think that it all comes down to what you're choosing to do and how you're choosing to control the things that you can control and then managing emotionally correct the things you cannot control and not feeding into that as much as possible. And I think we have to be better ourselves at doing that. Probably culturally, I mean, as a people, right? And I think a lot of it comes down to what you see online.
Yeah.
Most of what you see online is designed to tell you you're not doing a good job. Most of it. If you're into a diet, it's going to tell you you're doing it wrong. If you're working out, it's going to tell you the right way you need to be working out. If you, your family and your kids, and this is the best way you need to do it. And there are social media information galore out there about policing. You know, that chief needs to be this, and you guys need to be demanding more and better and things. And it's like, man, I don't know. I don't know if all of that lies on my desk. I think a large amount of it lies on how you choose to show up to work. And we talked about remembering the why of what we come to work for. That's where we need to be. I think we need to worry about why it is we come to work in the first place and what it is we do here as we're trying to decide whether or not we're going to let this thing impact us so much. And that's the only thing we can control ourselves.
100%. And, negativity spreads, but positivity also spreads.
It does. It
And
does.
again, I 100% agree that we have to start taking more responsibility for how we choose to show up in our lives. And one of the things that you and I talked about offline that we were like really in sync about was this idea of mental training and training your brain with gratitude and a positive mental attitude. Because you're right, there's so many things that we cannot control. But we can control that. I can wake up in the morning and I can list out, and it takes 30 seconds, maybe even less, 10 seconds for me to wake up and list out three things that I'm grateful for. I also have the same choice to wake up in the morning and say, I hate my job. I don't like this, and this is terrible. You have that choice of how you want to spend your time. And so is this something that you have incorporated into your daily routine? Is this something that you've always done? Like, how did that come about for you to understand the importance of mental training and training gratitude and a positive mental attitude?
I believe heavily in gratitude outside of all this work, right? I mean, every day that you're here is a gift, and you really ought to treat it as such. And even on my worst day, even on days when I've had a hard drive home or I've really questioned what it is I'm doing, there are chief candidates out there everywhere that would want this as their best day, right? And so
Mhm.
you really, and I think that's true for anybody in this line of work. Remember, you're here for a reason, and there are people that will kill to have what you have. And you have to ask yourself, like, what is it you're achieving? What are you coming here to do? And you really should be appreciative to some degree. And I'm in no way suggesting that everybody that work in the organization like management. That's okay. I understand people may not want to go bowling with me. That's okay. I understand that. But at least having gratitude to how we got here, the elected officials that give us a decent salary, the equipment we have, this wonderful building we're sitting in, and all the things that are working in our favor. We really have to take stock of that. I think we don't do that as much as possible, as much as we could. And I don't isolate just law enforcement. So I think in the world we've kind of gotten into this position of kind of forgetting our own need to have some gratitude because it sets you up for more positivity. And I think that helps us get back to why we're up top in the first place, or doing this job in the first place. I think that puts us on a good playing field to do that.
Yeah. There's actually a lot of science behind this. And I think that when we start using certain words like gratitude, sometimes people just completely check out or they roll their eyes and think it's like this woo-woo, like fluffy thing. But there's actually a lot of neuroscience to support the fact that if you do practice gratitude, you are literally rewiring your brain to look for more positive things. So the more you practice gratitude, the more happy and the more you're going to find things to be grateful for. It happens in your brain. Like your brain actually rewires itself. It's really interesting. So, anyone who's listening to it that may think that it's kind of like out there, if you research it, you'll see that there's actually a lot of data to support the more you do that, then the more you quite literally rewire your brain to be happier. And
Yeah,
who
and
doesn't want to be happier? Like no one wants to
right.
be miserable, right?
So that's something that I talk about. I'm glad you said that. That's something I talk about with people that bring me stories of misery, and how terrible things may be. And I ask people when they talk about so and so is miserable and they're saying all these things. I ask myself, you can't really ask yourself, why are you subscribing to that? What is it you're trying to, why are you feeding into that? And then what person in their right mind wants this to fail? Where are we where we're saying, oh yeah, I hope everything comes to a crashing halt upstairs or in this department or overall in this organization or in this city or in this town or whatever. Who wants that? Like you have got to distance yourself from that and
Yeah.
find your own wiring of dopamine that's way better than what you're currently hitting on. Because that is that negative feed of dopamine that pushes you in the wrong direction can be very, very addictive. And
Yeah.
the while the positive is so great, the negative can be just as I don't know, reassuring, comforting to people that live in that state, and they want that fight or flight mode all the time. I couldn't do that. I'd be sick if that's how I operated.
Yeah, it's super toxic. And, I saw this thing and I really believe it to be true that the closest five people to you are the most influential. And so choose your circle really wisely. And I really try to do that as much as I can. And there's been people in my life that I've had to kind of distance myself from for that very reason. And I think you have to look at the people that you're surrounding yourself with, and decide, is this person benefiting my life? Are they adding value? Are they positive? Are they striving to be better? Or do they feel like they're a weight pulling me down? And then, kind of choose how you spend your time and who you spend your time around. The other thing that I wanted to circle back to that you said that I thought was really important is normalizing wellness and positivity through success. I think that right now we're in an interesting shift, right? You have an older generation who never had this sort of thing, and it was really taboo to talk about wellness. And then you have a younger generation where it's really quite normal to come in and have these conversations about it. And I think that when you have skeptics, when you have stigma, when you can showcase that people who are taking care of themselves are having success, people who are going to therapy are loving it, people who went to EMDR, they're like, I wouldn't say healed, but they're thriving, in spite of a really hard incident. When you can show success I think that starts to spread and that starts to normalize things. And then the people who are negative or the people who aren't taking care of themselves become the minority, and everyone else is the majority.
Yeah, I think you're right. I really think there's a good drive into the direction of trying to manage the people with positive attitudes and really showcasing that as a good thing. We were talking in our command staff meeting a few weeks ago. We've got some really, we just released a bunch of new officers from field training into the wild, and a couple of them are just full of so much happiness and energy and excitement. And one of them's a little bit, she's a little punchy. She can hold her own. And we commented like she's going to do well here, helping to bring that vibe of a new culture in. Of yeah, I'm not subscribing to that stuff. I'm happy doing this over here, and I love it. And that's good. And we talked. It was like we need to like copy and paste them all throughout the organization. It's great, and that is in no way suggesting that the organization is bad. I just think it would help minimize people that are living on islands of fear and anger and toxicity that I can't seem to get through to, or we can't seem to get through to. By the way, I believe that exists in every walk of life, right?
Yeah.
Whether you're in a church or you're at a different work. My wife's a teacher. I'm sure in her school the same exists there. So I don't know that we'd ever be able to eradicate it. But if we certainly build a culture where it's better to be positive, then we can really focus on that and not listen to the ongoing drumbeat of everything's wrong, and it's not necessarily everything's wrong.
Yeah. I also think people want to be valued for what they do. And I think the more we have positive reinforcement for positive attitudes or for efforts of wellness, then other people are like, wait, like I want to be recognized. I want that too. And so I think the more you can call that out and say, hey, like this person's doing a really good job, or like, hey, check out their attitude. Like this was really great. Or like, hey, they got like a compliment through from a citizen in the community for being like really helpful and positive. I think the more, because I think sometimes we tend to feed to the negativity or we tend to feed to like disciplinary things versus like people who are doing a good job. And I think that the more you do that and reinforce it, the more people who aren't that way are like, and maybe not everybody, you can never get everybody, but maybe more people are like, hey, like I want to be called out for having a positive attitude.
Yeah.
I want to advance in my career and I know that I'm not going to be able to do that unless I can, be a part of that positive culture.
Yep. No, we agree completely. I think there's a lot of value in championing the people that have good attitudes. It's
Mm,
more than, hey, this the officer did a great job. We have an internal commendation system, and I'm making a point with every commendation to reply directly to the employee, and usually their chain of command are like, "This is great, nice job, well done." We've started highlighting the events where officers really used their positivity was a part of whatever they were doing, whether the citizen was impacted by it or the officer's approach to it was impacted or took extra steps in an effort to take care of somebody. We've really showcased that.
yeah.
And I also think there's still a stigma, and probably in law enforcement to some degree to acknowledge that the praise you got landed well on you. I think there's kind of a stigma. I think cops just kind of, oh, you got the big praise. And I think there's still briefing room, elbowing that goes on about that. So be it. But I think you're right. I think the more you can normalize it, you can get rid of that elbowing of, oh, you got broke out all the commendations today. You must be right there in the chief's pocket.
Yeah.
Making that really celebrated. And I think those deliberate acts of pointing it out and really championing it are a good thing.
I think we can also look for these moments for of recognition in our life, not just in, work life, but life. It's really interesting that we're talking about this now. So, on Sundays, usually I go to this particular like co-working space. They have like a little lobby and it's really nice. And like I'll go and I'll just work for a few hours and they have like a little cafe. And I was there yesterday, and there was this girl who came up who was, serving the drinks and, food or whatever. And she was super attentive. She was so good. And I'm there every week. And she was just the best out of anyone that I've ever had, at this particular place. She was just really good. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to ask for her manager. And I'm going to give them positive feedback on this girl because a lot of times we don't talk to people unless we're complaining. right? Like the managers aren't called unless there's a problem. And so I called the manager over and I was like, hey, I just want to give you positive feedback. She's great. Like the best that I've had here, like super attentive. And I just wanted to give you that feedback because I know you probably get a lot of negative ones. And, whatever kudos you need to give to her, I just wanted to pass that along. And he was like so excited. He was like, wow, thank you. Like, I'm going to write an email saying that she's a rock star. And I was like, that's great. And I think that if we can start operating in that way, try to find the good stuff. It's so easy to find the bad stuff. It's almost more of a challenge sometimes to find the good stuff. And how can we, it's almost like a treasure hunt, how can we like find those things and hold on to those things? Because they do exist. They do, and it's even as simple as that. Like maybe you have a girl at the coffee shop who's just a light of sunshine, and you take the time out of your day to recognize that.
Yeah, and you hit on something really important. Like if you read Simon Sinek's book about leaders eat last, right, or why leaders eat last, he talks about that paying forward, something that people do in their day to boost someone else, and how that rewires your brain to think about how to reward positive activity and a good attitude and things that are helpful and how that made you feel. And so now, not only did you improve this person's day and that manager's day, but yourself, you had that dump of that good serotonin feel of, man, that really felt good to lift somebody up. And I agree. It's
Yeah.
more, it's beyond you giving the commendation. It's how it impacts you going forward. So
And I like that you said going forward because it kind of brings me to my next point that I think that when we can have gratitude, when we can have a positive mental attitude, when we can pay it forward and look for the positives, it helps us to push past some of that burnout. It helps us to have longevity and resilience within our lives. What is your definition of resilience? What do you think is the key to resilience?
for me, it's just as simple as being able to return to where you were, being able to withstand what you've dealt with and return to where you were. And
Mm.
where you are in life is always in flux. Things change, right? I mean, I'm 46, so I don't heal as fast from a strained hamstring like I used to, but the resilience of being able to manage that and these constant exposure to bureaucratic issues or policing issues out in the field that are dangerous or difficult or very sad. Repeated exposure to that, being able to bounce back to a state of normalcy, whatever normal is for you in those moments, right? Because it does change a lot based on where you are in life. That's resilience to me. And
Yeah.
it's physical and a mental and emotional approach to how you can kind of resume your equilibrium.
Yeah, I actually really agree with that. I used to say, like, how can you get back to baseline as quickly as possible?
Right.
I kind of think of it, I'm a really visual person. I kind of think of it like imagine we're walking in a straight line. Straight line is going to be the quickest way,
Right.
right? But then we have peaks and valleys. And if we can try to get back to that straight line as quickly as possible, then we have more success with forward trajectory, forward movement. And that's what we're looking for, right? We're always trying to improve ourselves, we're trying to move forward. And as soon as you have a peak and you get too high, it's harder to come back down. And the same goes with those valleys, right? If you get too low, it's harder to come back up. So, how can you try to level yourself as much as you can? Try not to get too high when things are good, try not to get too low when things are bad. So, it's a little bit of that idea of like stoicism, a little bit, like how can we like stay as level as possible through the ups and the downs? And that's going to get us further in life.
And I think it's important that we always just remember that you're not, for the most part, you're not going to be able to go back and duplicate the yesteryears. Like you're not going to be able to go back and make it where you were when you were 28 and brand new to this job, and you could do all these things and sleep less. You're never going to be able to go back to that level of equilibrium. So kind of like what you said, where I think all of that stoic midline is it's relative based on your current perspective. And I think
Mhm.
as long as you understand that, just trying to get the balance and calm. I'm trying to get to what is normal for me. I tell my teenager who's about to graduate high school, and I tell him all the time. He talks about when I graduate high school and I get in, he wants to do a fireman, so he's going to go to the fire academy. Sounds great. When I get into the fire academy, everything's gonna be great. And I was talking to him the other night, I was like, we say that a lot in life. When I get to this moment, everything's gonna be great. And you have to realize that when you get to that moment, there's three other problems that have arisen. Two of the ones you were worried about are no longer an issue. So everything's gonna be as balanced as you let it. You're never gonna be standing on an island going, I met this is it. It's never because if you continuously think that, you'll disappoint yourself time and time again with not being able to fit your goal of everything will be great when. And I think your illustration of that stoic line is probably the best, and monitoring your highs and lows to not overdo it, so that returning to normal is better, easier.
Yeah, I believe that to your point that it is the destination, not the journey, or excuse me, it's the journey that's not a destination.
Right,
And I do find, and I've had this in my life where, to your point of like always looking at the next thing, you miss so much that's happening now that's really good. And sometimes you don't realize that this might be the best time of your life. Like
right,
we hear all these people who are in academy who are like, I can't wait to graduate. And it's
right.
like, but this time you'll never get back. You're never going to be in the academy again. You're never going to be like new and learning this stuff and having these connections in the way that you do now. Like there's so much beauty and growth in this moment. And trust me, you're going to blink and it's going to be over and you're never going to have that moment again. And so like yes, we want to keep moving forward and we want to accomplish things, but like how can we be more mindful and present in the time that we have? And
Yeah,
how, to your point of like thinking about the past, how can we not compare ourselves to our previous selves? Because I think comparison's a thief of all joy. How can we be okay with where we are right now while still striving to be better? It is a balance, like, but I think we miss so many really, really good things because we're always so fixated on either the future or the past. So,
yeah.
um, my final question for you is for that younger generation. So, the younger men and women who are coming into this career today, what words of wisdom would you share with them? Maybe something that you wish you would have known earlier or something that's helped you along the way.
Yeah, I think that I mean there's several steps. Like you're stepping into a culture of law enforcement, and law enforcement is accountability. That's a large amount of what we do. So start with your own personal accountability as you're stepping into this job. Be accountable for yourself and the things you're supposed to do. Understand what brought you to this job, and hang on to that as your baseline of why you got into law enforcement in the first place. But your ability to be happy, and your ability to protect your peace are critical, and it is only defined to you. Your happiness is going to be different for every single person that's around. So make sure you understand what drives your happiness and protect that, guard that. Don't let people take it from you. Don't let people steal your joy. Don't subscribe to the people that may not feel the same way you do about it or try to downplay your happiness. And my other advice to you is don't share good news. Don't share negative news with somebody if it's not somebody you would normally share good news with. That's
Mm,
a thief of your own happiness to do that with somebody, because they'll use some people might use that against you. And I think it's an all of us kind of an approach. Just know that you're joining this team and it's all of us. And your attitude drives your own level of culture in this organization. So come with a good attitude, understand your happiness, and understand that your personal and intrinsic happiness may not be rooted in the workplace. This is where you work, right? There will be ups and there'll be downs and there'll be highs and lows and moments, but your happiness should be rooted to things that are outside of this workplace as much as possible, so that when you're here and you are pushed off your course left or right based on a horrible call you responded to, the chief sent a wacko email, and now we all have to do this. When you get pushed off course, your happiness exists elsewhere. I think that's what people have to guard the most that they can. I think that will help make people happier in the long run. And I think that's what leads to better longevity, is that physical, mental, and emotional response to everything that's around you. That's my words of advice: is you drive the culture, and it's your own attitude that you bring that's shaping that.
thank you. Thank you for your time, Chief Rollins. I really appreciate you coming on here today and sharing your words of wisdom.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Of course.